Welcome back to Real Life Recaps. Please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Hello, everyone. Today, I have only one long story with comments. It does have some trigger warnings, as you can probably see from the title. Today's story was posted by Correct Present 6301. My narcissist mom attempted to have me murdered. Hi. I'm mostly writing this for a vent, as I'm bedbound again today from anxiety and the lasting effects of a brutal smear campaign run on me by my mother last year. I am still nowhere near recovering emotionally or in any other aspect. You will understand in a moment why that is. I understand how insane my story is before I begin. If anyone else has experienced something similar, I would love to hear from you. I am a 31-year-old female. I was working in social services for about 10 years when this all began. In 2022, I was diagnosed with inattentive ADHD, and once I was medicated, I was a whole new person. I was seriously feeling like a new human being. The problem was, there were a few people close to me who were banking on my symptoms. I was seriously aloof to a lot. At the time, I had been in a relationship with a man who was incarcerated. He had me on his visitor and call list as his girlfriend, and I visited him often. I had recently ended a 10-year friendship with who is now my ex-best friend. We went to high school together but had no communication until after high school, when we seemed to hit it off on social media and via text. Notable, in hindsight, is that this friend often went on loving rants to others, especially in front of me. She would say things along the lines of, I admired her from afar in high school, and I was so excited when we started talking. She almost seemed to be romantically or sexually interested in me, and often would kiss me while intoxicated. The very first time we hung out was in the spring of 2020, while I was on the tail end of my engagement with a covert narcissist. We will tie this into things later as well. I then ended the relationship and moved into my first ever apartment at 27. I remember the first time she came over, she spilled an entire bottle of orange pop on my brand new rug and sort of laughed it off. She was a heavy drinker and would go on to cause me many, many more issues. She was territorial of me and got me in trouble frequently. I now know this is due to the fact she wanted to bring me down to her level. When I say her level, I mean she was in a low-paying career, had a toddler son, and lived with her parents. Time went on. My mother, whom I was quite close to at that time, helped me with bills and such. I'm the scapegoat child, and it brought her joy to do so, which I appreciated. Fast forward, spring of 2022. I ended our friendship after dozens of sabotages by her, and went to move on with my life. Around the same time, I had confronted my mother about the smear campaign she ran on my father, who I was not allowed to speak to until I did at 28. This severely pissed my mother off, still holding a grudge from 25-odd years ago. My father's smear campaign included claims of child endangerment, physical abuse of me and my siblings, claims that he was an alcoholic, drug addict, and schizophrenic. It was at this time that my ex-fiancé, ex-best friend, and mother all began communicating and gossiping about me being unaware. In December of 2022, I was supposed to testify against an ex for a domestic assault and chose not to for safety reasons. January of 2023, I discovered my then-boyfriend, the incarcerated one, was actually married, and I ended the relationship. This, I was unaware, was the pulling of the plug, and my smear campaign began. See, my ex-best friend had been sleeping with said boyfriend behind my back, unknown to me at this time. He was also in full communication with her that whole time while we were not friends. This is when my nightmare began. On Jan. 19/20/23. I received an email from the ex-best friend, apologizing, and her reason for contacting me was this, as well as the recent death of a mutual acquaintance. This was foreshadowing, unknown to me then. The acquaintance, I came to learn, was shot and killed by my local police, who I have since discovered are all affiliated with my ex's gang. I chose to forgive her in my fragile state, and the following evening we were texting as I was heading out for dinner with a coworker. I had been giving her a play-by-play of my night. I left the restaurant and stopped at a liquor store. While inside, 3 Arabic men asked me if I wanted to have a drink with them at the hotel next door, and I said sure, why not? Said drink was poisoned with fentanyl. I knew this immediately. As I'm allergic to opiates, I stood up, yelling, and safely left, driving another block to my apartment. These men had followed me from the restaurant, unknown at the time. They are members of my ex's gang. I confirmed the poisoning the following evening when I went to work at the treatment center I was employed at, as we did daily drug screening and I had the tools. I arrived at my apartment at about 8:40 p.m. on a Friday night, going upstairs and locking my door behind me. I live alone. I opened a cooler, sending a video to said friend, and then proceeded to go lay down and fall asleep in my room. I was awoken by a sound in my apartment and stood up, walking a few steps around the corner to the entrance of my bedroom. I was immediately sucker-punched in the mouth before I could see who was there. I fell backwards, which left a mark on my wall, and was dragged into the living room area. There I was viciously stomped on all over my body while face down, my pelvis, hands, back, legs, and feet. All I remember is hearing my own voice sobbing, "Someone please help me." I was then essentially kidnapped and illegally removed from my home. Had this not occurred, I would have never known who did this to me, aside from the fact I woke up in a jail cell. The next morning, I returned home, confused. I received a text from the friend stating that she thought I would have come out with her. I told her what happened, and she acted alarmed. Unknowingly, she had made the calls that night, and this was the first step in my smear campaign. Though not speaking to my mother at the time, I called her. She, too. Already knew, but acted surprised. In hindsight, her tone and things she said should have told me this, but no one assumes anyone would do this to them. The conversation was fine until I asked her to help me move because I wasn't safe where I was. This is when she gaslit me and berated me, saying, "You were probably so inebriated you don't know what happened." She then said no and hung up on me. I got emotional, and this was used to further belittle and shame me. I emailed my building manager apologizing if any disturbance occurred, though not quite quiet hours, and requested camera footage, and then received a breach letter on my door. They refused to provide photo or video. This is because my building manager, a heavy crack user, accepted payment by the 2 dirty cops who did it, and he was part of said plan. I got upset with him, and he then served me an eviction notice. In the days that followed, I struggled, and my mother was rude and ignored me mostly. Added during this time period, I had lucked out and secured a job. Court wasn't for a year anyway, so I didn't have a record technically. It was a really good job and would be life-changing. I completed 2 weeks of online training, as I would be working with addicts who had been kicked out of all shelters and supportive housing. No eviction policy. This obviously included a criminal record check. Weeks went by, and everyone else in my training group had to go through. I called multiple times, and they wouldn't give me a straight answer. It ended up being a full 2 months before it went through. I had no record and no accusations at this time. The police were just holding it hostage to torture me and prevent me from making income. This led to so much stress and hardship, I went days without eating at times and lost 30 pounds. I was only 130 to begin with. In hindsight, I'm now aware that the friend had been taking secret pictures of me to show her partners in crime, documenting me wasting away with joy. All because they said I'm mean, aka not stupid, and have expectations of those around me moral-wise. 2 months after the first attack on March 21st, 2023, the friend had asked me if I wanted her to do my hair. She is a stylist. I said yes. She picked me up, and we had a few drinks and picked up the supplies. Unknowingly, I was being walked into my second, much more severe set-up police beating. Hauntingly on the way, I had said, "I feel like people just want me to give up and die, and I'm not going to," she said. "Do you think it has anything to do with me?" I said no. "I think you showed up at the perfect time." I thought she meant, did I think she brought me bad luck? When we returned to my apartment, we had a lot of bags and took 2 trips inside, On the way out to grab the second bags, I turned around and handed her my keys, saying to here, lock that. I don't trust these people. I had disputes the eviction, which takes time. I didn't hear her behind me, so I turned around and she proceeded to twist my key in the lock with a smirk on her face, and broke it, making it impossible to get back in. My head immediately started spinning as she started banging on doors saying we could jump balconies. This, of course, was all pre-planned. She wanted me intoxicated and at her disposal. I got us outside and we walked to a neighboring restaurant where I had another drink and asked a girl sitting alone where her friends were. She said she had none, so I invited her to hang out with us. This was a wise move as she recorded the incident that was about to happen. I had been texting my building manager who was on site but refused to come, let me in planned. A man in the restaurant said we were being loud, and I got mad and walked back to my apartment, not realizing the friend was hoarding my keys. She had said she would be right there. She didn't arrive for 25 minutes. In that 25 minutes, I sobbed outside and asked a few people for help. By the time the friend and girl from the restaurant arrived, the signal had already been given. A police SUV rounds the corner at record speed, and out hops an officer who tackled me once in the lobby. We ended up in the elevator where the evidence video occurs. The officer kept shoving me into walls and suddenly took me to the ground again, handcuffing me as I'm screaming for help and crying. The girl says on video, "She did nothing to you, sir." He then stands me up and continues to shove me into walls while handcuffed in the front of my body. I start to audibly insult him, and he takes me full force into a face slam to the ground, busting my nose. I'm heard begging for help as blood pools under my face. In the video, you can see the friend trying to get close-ups of my face and moving around proudly. These photos were for my ex in prison, as he instructed the corrupt cop to disfigure me. He holds me there for quite a while as the girl says, "Her face is broken, get her up." He noticeably puts all his 250 pounds into crushing my body and then brings me up. I'm still heard begging for help. I was then taken to jail. OP added I was tortured for over 8 hours in cells. They cranked the heat and turned off the water fountain. In the morning, the guards taunted me, and I could barely walk due to the crushing of my body. They slammed the door in my face when I asked for a cab. I limped across the street to a coffee shop and used a phone to call my own cab. I took the cab to the hospital, as I thought my nose was broken. Here I would get x-rays and spoke to a social worker whose first sentence was, "Why does this keep happening?" After being cleared for a broken nose plus documenting my injuries, I took a cab home. My building manager let me in and handed me a cigarette saying, "Fun night." I unlocked your door for you, like, why didn't he do that last night? I got upstairs and locked my door, knowing the friend had my phone and purse. I laid down and cried for a while in pain, and then she arrived at my door. The night prior, she had gone to a hotel to celebrate, and she completely brushed off my injuries and was almost smug. As she leaves, she says, "Take pictures of your face." In the morning, I was told that I assaulted this officer. I did not. This was to take my job and career from me. I was immediately fired. The ex-best friend's brother is a local sheriff, and my mother secretly began dating a retired officer. I later figured this all out. I was due to be murdered on May 21st, 2023 by officers. I figured it out before it could happen. I confronted them, and they essentially laughed. Since these events, I've suffered immense trauma and hardship. My mother admitted to her part, and as narcs do, wouldn't allow me to confront her. The ex-best friend attempted to excuse herself from it, but she was the key component. Without her, none of it would have been possible. The ex admitted it as well. I've chased justice and have been repeatedly denied. Essentially, how dare I confront my mother's lies about my father, and how dare I end my friendship with the friend? Turns out the ex-best friend, and my mother all carefully planned this for over a year, and when I broke up with the ex, the plug was pulled. No consequences have occurred for any involved. And now, for the comments. Comment 1. This is horrible. You need to go to another city. You're lucky to survive so far. You're surrounded by evil people. Get away, far away. You need time and peace. You didn't say you got kids. If you have no kids, you have no ties. You ain't getting no help where you're at, and you're getting the opposite of that. Run. Run hard, run fast. All I can say is, you got to go somewhere safe. What you might think is over, ain't over. Go. OP replied, yeah, I feel very stuck, 'cause my career is on hold. I did move to the other side of town and lucked out with my apartment. However, my life is affected by this daily. I can't even go to work as the court case gets adjourned over and over. I had very few people in my life to begin with, and these people removed almost all of them, and I'm completely isolated, drink lightly every day to try to numb the pain and for something to do while I'm at these people's disposal. They just keep adjourning my fake case so they can torture me longer. I do go back to school in January to take a quick 15-week course, then I think I'll jet to another province for sure. Comment 2. A different state? I'd go to the other side of the bloody world and release all the info and proof of what these disgusting people did. I'm betting this took place in the US. This is freaking horrendous. OP replied, I've been so isolated and gaslit that it's been difficult for me to sit down and recite it. I have a 16-page document I wrote detailing everything, but I plan to make a TikTok story time of it at some point, exposing everyone and showing all my evidence. There's so many things I discovered along the way. I unofficially solved several murders the police committed or hired people to commit. I'm from British Columbia, Canada, and the entire province's justice system is corrupt. I had to go to the next province and tell the cops there for them to finally leave me alone. Comment 3. Oh God, I am actually heartbroken for you. I cannot comprehend the amount of hatred and just vile they have inside them to actually make you endure this. Like two grown butt women set all this up with one salty, deadbeat ex and his crappy friends just because they were annoyed you stood up for your dad and didn't want to be friends anymore? Jesus. I seriously hope you can bring this all to light and finally get the justice you deserve for yourself. Just please make sure you are safe, far away from these people before you do. Might even be worth living abroad temporarily while you do. Thank you, too, for the work you have done to help solve other cases, and I am so sorry the justice system has let you down in such a horrendous way, and that your mother and ex-friend are this disgusting. Wow, this is absolutely terrible, and I hope the OP of this story survives and thrives, and those bad people of her life get what is coming to them. I did see another post that told OP to trust no one, and I agree with that post. What do you think about this story? What kind of advice would you give this OP? Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.